This is Building a Creative Life. I'm Pam Vale, a New England artist, bringing the world of creativity to your door through casual conversations with artists, creators, and everyday people, helping curious, midlife women begin their next creative chapter. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Today's episode is a little longer than usual because this conversation was so good I couldn't cut a thing. My guest today is my dear friend Leslie O'Leary, a lifelong creative whose story will absolutely speak to your heart. She grew up sewing, dreaming of fashion design, and ended up working in the dental field for years before finding her way back to art through the world of doll making. Now she not only creates beautiful handcrafted pieces, she teaches others, empowering them to discover their own creative voice. In this episode, we talk about everything from healing through hand sewing to what it really takes to live a creative, self-employed life. We talk rituals, cultural influences, artistic mastery, and what it means to return to yourself through creativity. Stay tuned till the end. I'll be sharing a few final thoughts that just might be the gentle nudge you need right now on your own creative path. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having me on. I just feel like being artist is so important in this world, and so I love what you're doing. I just think it's so wonderful.
I adore you. You know that.
Yeah, and I adore you.
Today, there are some specific things that I want to chat with you about. Obviously, we talk about a wide range of things personally, but I want to do things a little different today. Normally, I would have somebody introduce themselves and talk about what they do now, but I want to go back a little bit because I'm really fascinated by your story. I think that it would really resonate with women that are thinking about their path in life. And so if you could take us back a little bit, maybe to your childhood at some point, and talk about what Leslie was like creatively, or what what it looked like then.
That's wonderful. I love that. And we all come to this earth, and I feel like we all come to this earth with a gift. And sometimes it takes most of us, a lot of us, a long time to figure out what it is. Why are we here? I feel really fortunate because I'm going to say I was 3 years old, and I asked my mom for a mannequin for Christmas because I wanted to sew clothes for it. But I didn't even know how to sew clothes. I mean, I was three, and how did I even know what a mannequin was? I mean, where did all that come from? And so, and then even I'm going to go back even a little bit further. I'm going to go to I asked my mom, I said, because my mom sewed, and so that's a gift that she gave me. And I said, do you remember this one little dress, and it was gold, and it had little mother of pearl, like diamond shaped little buttons on it. And then there was another one that was light blue that had red and blue tufts on it. And I go, do you remember those? I remember that fabric, like the feel and how the fabric looked and even how it smelled. And she goes, Leslie, you were 1 year old when I made those outfits. And I remember
Wow.
them clear, like the fabric. So fabric and textiles and just that has always been in my life. And so that, and I'm still doing that. So that's really, I mean, there's, ups and downs in life. And so I learned to sew by hand when I was 5. And I was just kind of doing it on my own. And since my mom sewed, I had access to fabric and scissors and all that kind of stuff. So I was just doing it. And then by the time I was 7, I was sewing on a sewing machine. And it was just a natural thing that this is why I'm here and I should be doing this. And then we fast forward into high school, and we have prom and all that kind of stuff. And so I was always, and at that time I was sewing most of my clothes myself and taking this sleeve from this pattern, this bodice, and putting stuff together to create my own things. And then I started to lose my mom in the sense of her guiding me in sewing because I was starting to go this other direction. And so for my high school prom dress, and that was back in the 70s, so Kiana, that was a fabric, like a polyester, was like really the thing. So think of
Yeah.
like Staying Alive, John Travolta,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And so I designed my prom dress from a bathing suit top and then added a long, maxi skirt to it. And so I still remember the fabric. I mean, and so I've
Wow.
been sewing my entire life, and
Do you
it's
still sew clothes for yourself? I know
you
you
know,
do other sewing,
yes,
which we'll talk about.
I don't sew any clothes for myself
Yeah.
anymore. I know. I think about it, but because I sew for a living, I don't want to do it. So,
I don't blame
and
you.
fabric these days is so expensive,
Yes.
and so and I buy like really specialized fabric and work with really specialized fabric. So I make little purses for myself, like little, like weekend kind of projects, but I
Yep.
don't really sew for myself anymore. And that, just having that background and just that intuitive understanding
Mm.
helped me my entire life. And just knowing that, you know, I am an artist and I am a seamstress and I love fabric. And well, you can see the fabrics behind me,
Yes.
And so I just think fabric has a life of its own and has so much to say. And I feel very blessed and honored that I can come to this world and work in
Yeah.
that medium.
When you were younger, at that time when you were creating for yourself, did you feel like a creative profession was available to you? Was there support around possibly doing something creative?
Um, you know, um, like all of us, we have interesting childhoods, and many of us have interesting parents.
Yeah.
My mom, I gained a lot of creative insight from her and sewing with her, but we also had that opposing relationship
Hmm.
where whatever I did, she took credit for. So, I learned to more pull it into myself and just create on my own. And so I
Hmm.
stopped going to her for guidance because that whatever I produced was like not mine. And so as an artist, we all want our voice to be heard and not through somebody else. And
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I would say that growing up, I thought I was going to be a fashion designer. It was
Me
just
too.
like, yeah, yeah, right. And you went to school for it.
I went to
And
school for it, but I didn't become
yeah, and
that.
so, um, yeah, so I did think
You
that
saw
that was
that there was
going
a
to be it.
possibility.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have other creative outlets other than sewing?
Um, you know, I would say probably not. I mean,
No, that was it. Your
it'd be like
focus.
little fingers off of it. So I would say like maybe embroidery. I did a
Yes.
lot of embroidery when I was growing up because that was also really popular during
Mhm.
that time. So any handcraft I was doing, you know, anything that you worked with your hands.
Yeah.
So yeah, and
And
then
then once you started to enter like adulthood, what did that, did it stay? Did it transition? Like
yeah,
what,
it
what happened?
transitioned for a bit. It was always there within me, but then I was in high school, and that's kind of when you decide what you're going to do with the rest of your life, type of thing. And I really thought about going to like a fashion design school, and I thought if I go to and I lived in Colorado at the time, and I thought if I'm going to be in fashion, then I'm going to have to move to New York because that's what
Hmm.
I'm going to have to do. And even at that age, I knew that that probably wasn't the lifestyle for me. I knew that where that would go and the type of person I would have to be able
Right.
to survive that type of environment. That's a tough environment.
And that was the reality at that time period. I mean, it
Yes,
really was. There are options now
yes.
that weren't available then, but yeah, that definitely
And I
that's
also
true.
had a little cat that I loved, and so I didn't want to leave my cat either. And and I really wasn't cut out for college. It just the free spirit of the artist or whatever I just don't think that way. And um so I believe it or not, I went in. So my dad, you have to you have to get out there and you have to support yourself. And so I actually ended up going to I started with like a basic dental assistant school. So I went and did that, and then I was able to build on that and further my career in the dental field. So I worked in the dental field for 14 years,
Wow.
and as a it's called an expanded duties dental assistant. So I could like put fillings in, do cosmetic dentistry. There was a lot of things that I could do. So that in its sense was even artistic in itself. And I remember working on my patients and, carving a filling for, a filling. Everybody knows what
Yeah.
it's like for a cavity, a filling, and carving it. And I go, okay, now I just have to put my initials in there and then you'll be all set. and, and it was, oh, it's a very regimented field to be in. I mean, you have to be extremely precise. Your margin of error is 1/16th of a millimeter. So your
Wow.
margin of error
Wow,
is,
that so translates into what you do
doesn't it?
today. Oh my
Doesn't
God, I
it?
can't wait to talk
I
about that.
know.
That's
I
funny. I
know.
didn't really think about that
I
connection.
know. It's like, so was it inherent to me or was it like built? I mean, did I learn it on
Right.
the, was it
That's a
nurture
long
or
time
whatever it's
to,
called?
yeah.
And so 1/16th of a millimeter is like one hair width. So that's how much margin of error. And then, but I love the preciseness of everything. And so I was in that, and then I quit because there was some issues that went on with the dentist I was working for, and I was going to stay there to save the patients, and then I realized that I could eventually end up hurting the patients through his misjudgment in what he was doing, and so I quit, which was really heartbreaking because I loved my patients so much, and the way I realized it was time for me to quit was I was driving to work one day and I thought, if I get in an accident, I won't have to go to work today. And I went,
Well, that's a sign.
okay. And so I went in that day, turned the key in, and left. I
Wow.
left. And then I thought, what am I going to do, with my life? So
Yeah.
I turned in the key and I thought, what am I going to do now? And so that's when art came back to me. And I've been dabbling a little bit here and there with art. And so art came back to me. And I thought, well, I know I want to work in fabric because that was a given. And so there was a community college across the street. And I thought, I'm going to take classes that are the opposite of fabric. So I
Like
took
what?
so I took classes in clay, and I
Oh,
took
okay.
classes in stone and in wood. So it was all sculpture. And so the difference between fabric and like hard substances like that is those are subtractive. Like, you get a piece of marble and you chisel it away to create
Mm,
what you want. Where fabric is, you put it together to create something that you want. So they were
interesting.
two opposite ends of mediums. And so,
That's so interesting. I also think people don't utilize that resource enough of like a community college or even a professional, like we have Rhode Island School of Design here, but they offer tons of extension courses that anybody can take. And I think people that have, are curious to just try something like that is
yeah.
not a resource people often think about.
And I
And they're
think
not that
that,
expensive, too. I mean, they
no, I
can,
mean, mine was,
yeah,
well, I don't remember what it was, but, well, it
yeah.
was a long time ago. So, but, um, but it expands your mind, you know what I mean? I felt like, here's cloth on this end, and if I pull myself over here, it can't help but make this grow. And it
Mm,
has. I mean, I use all those skills in what I do now, and also the dental skills. I mean,
right.
instead of, so for time management, I have, I understand in confirming my patients or now my clients. So I understand like the business of doing something, and
So I think
so,
nothing's ever wasted. So,
yes,
it's your skills or your experience. And I think people that are out there that might be sort of at, maybe after their career, a traditional career, that none of that is wasted. Like you said, that you bring all that with you into whatever you do. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So I think that, having all those different types of things, all those skills from the past, you can always use them for what you do now because
Yes.
everything feeds, everything builds on one another. And it's really just being about there and just try, like you were saying, just to try it, like I'm curious, I'm wondering, like, you know, kite making. I don't know why kite making came to me, but kite making,
Right.
like, you know, what would that do? And how will, and everything is connected. And it,
Right. And you never know what other door that's going to open in your mind creatively.
right,
There's
right,
so many options and so many hobbies and so many crafts and traditional crafts and things that we don't even know about.
right. Yes. And, even like the, the job of being in the dental field, that played right into, managing my business because, I am an artist, but it is also a business. And so, and that's, um, I think that's important for people to realize that you can be an artist, but if you want to do it as a business, you have to treat it as a business too. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
So
So,
where now you took those classes and gained some new insight and skills and broadened yourself. So where did that take you?
so, and so the whole career as I'm going to say doll maker, I'm doing this air quote thing, doll maker, started was I thought I knew that I wanted to create dolls. And so back then you had yellow pages. So I actually went to the yellow pages and I looked up doll making. And the only thing they had in those days was reproduction porcelain doll making.
Hmm.
And so I jumped into that. But there wasn't enough freedom in it, because you had to paint four eyelashes on this side and four eyelashes on this side. It was like dentistry exact, but it wasn't enough freedom for me.
Yeah.
And so I had already been sewing, so I thought, well, I'm just going to make my own dolls. And so I was still living in Denver at that time, and I went to a nice like boutique section of Denver, and one of my former clients owned a children's like a high-end children's clothing store there. And so the unicorn is what it was called. And so that was magical. I should have figured that one out. And so
Right.
I went and I saw her and she goes, Leslie, where have you been? I haven't seen you in so long. And I go, I'm making dolls now. And she goes, I want some dolls. And I go, okay. So I go, I'll be back in a week. And so I went home and I made this little wool rag doll with little gauzy dress and little vintage beads and yarn hair, button eyes, very simple. And I took it back to her and she goes, I love this. I want 13 of them. And I went, and she goes, and I want boys and girls. And I went, okay, I'll be back in a week. And so, no, a month. I'll be back in a
A
month.
month, I was going to say,
A week.
wow, Leslie.
I'll be back in a month. And so I brought her 13 dolls in a month and we did them on consignment and they
Hmm.
all sold.
Oh,
And
sure.
which was, I mean, wow, that's like pretty cool. And so there was also across the street from this, there was a really nice art gallery and like a handcraft arts gallery. And so um, I started to step up with my doll making from the little rag dolls, and the way that I did that is I was at a show and I was showing my little rag dolls, and I had I thought the cutest setup, and I had little sunflowers, and I even had a hooked rug and the whole bit. And people kept coming by going, "Those are really cute. I could make that." And then they would leave, and then I would hear,
Something
and I would
every
tell
artist
them,
has heard.
yes, yes. And as I was selling them for 25 bucks, I like, and people were still going, "Oh, I could make that. I could make that." And so about maybe the sixth or seventh person that came by that said, I can make that. And I said, and I can teach you how to make that. And so then I started taking addresses down, because I don't even know if we had email then. I started taking addresses down so that I could write a little newsletter to send out and let people know when I was going to have classes. So then I needed to find somewhere to teach. So I went to Skyloom Fibers in Denver, and they were a really funky fiber studio, so weaving, hooked rugs, any of that type of, like knitting, crocheting, that type of thing. And I went there and I took a little basket with my dolls, and I said, "Hey, I want to teach doll making. Are you guys interested?" And they said, "Yes. Do you have a pattern?" And I said, "Yes, I have a pattern."
Of course, that's
Of course,
in
I
my
did it.
head.
Yeah, it'll be out in a minute. And so I went home, and so yes, they were going to take me as a teacher. So I went home and I thought, what is the hardest thing for people to do? And I thought, draw faces.
Mm,
Drawing faces is so intimidating for people.
it is.
So I did my first pattern that I designed was called the doll with the colorful soul, and what the technique. So it was like a pancake doll, which means it's like just a front and a back that you sew together. It did have feet, but it was very like rag doll type of thing, and very simple. But what we really zeroed in on was how to draw the face, because I had already been. Oh, I'm going to say, besides sewing, I was drawing a lot too, and so I really, and I think that's where dentistry helped out, because it helped me break down like the steps
Oh,
of
yeah.
how to draw a face.
Yeah.
And so I put
Because
it
just because someone can make something doesn't mean they can teach it.
right, right, because you really, really have to give people a step by step.
Yes.
And in dentistry, everything is done exactly step by step. And so I really feel that that helped me develop that mind skill of being able to do that. And so my first class, I think I had maybe 4 students in, but I was so excited about it, and everybody did it, and they did it beautifully, and it was successful. And so then I thought, I love teaching. I just love teaching. And so I started to develop new patterns all the time with a new technique in it that they could learn.
Mm-hmm.
So that was and still is today, my biggest thing is that when you take a workshop with me, you are learning a minimum of one new technique, probably more now. But
Right.
and teaching also helped me really push myself to develop my own artistic ability, because like you said, when you teach you have to really know it,
Right.
because your students are, you have to help them along, and you have to
Right.
catch them before they make a disastrous mistake,
The other
and
thing too is like the fact that you teach them an actual skill. There's obviously like paint and sip nights are super popular because it's a creative outlet and it's fun and it's social, but they're not necessarily learning a skill. They're just following along and they get a good product out of it for that they're happy with, and they had a social time with some friends. But the fact that people are walking away with some skill that they can apply to other things is really important, I feel, creatively, especially for people who think they're not creative.
yes, and I love well, I love my students, you know that, but I was in early in my career, I was in another workshop that I was teaching, and by this time my collective had grown a little bit bigger, so I was getting better students, and I was working through quilt shops and that type of thing, and I had some new students in my workshop, and I go, okay, now we're going to draw the face, and you're going to do it, and I'm going to teach you how to do it. And there was a gal in the back, and I just remember the expression on her face was like truly deer in the headlights kind of thing. She was like, her eyes got big, and she froze. And I said, I am here to help you with this. I'm going to teach you this step by step. You'll be fine. You'll do it. By the end of the class, she was holding the doll up in the air, waving it around. Look what I did. Look what I
Ah,
did. I did it. I did.
you
And
can't beat that, right? That's
the,
you just opened up like a world to this person, you know?
yes.
It's
And,
amazing.
and it's even today, my students are like, I can't believe I'm doing this and I'm learning this. And it is their confidence, in themselves and like, that small, like painting the face, like you were saying, probably led her to do maybe things better in her job or try things
Absolutely.
like experiment in different things in her life. People, everyone is so like nervous about what the outside world thinks about. And if we can just have a moment where it's okay, and I'm going to say play,
Yes. Yeah.
for them, for my students to have a moment to themselves and know that they have somebody to support them. Um, I just is and for me the reward is seeing them do it.
Absolutely.
It's
And I feel like at some point, most people that think they're not creative have had that shut down at some point. Maybe as a child, maybe something was criticized that they did, or maybe unintentionally. Who knows? But at some point, they received a message that what they had to share creatively or their voice wasn't valid or wasn't good enough or something. So the fact that at this stage, to be able to open that up for them, and then they have that going forward for the rest of their
right,
life.
right.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
And I think it's it's so sad, especially within the arts, that it can be so belittled, where it
Yes.
is such a beauty that we bring to this world. And art is in it's on the stool I'm sitting on. I mean, art is the chair. I mean, art is the curtains on my, I mean,
Yeah.
art is how we live in this world. And um so that's a function of art, but then also to be able to give them like an emotional support through art, I think is such a helpful and wonderful thing to be able to bring to this world.
Absolutely. And it's very healing. I feel like it gives them something to build on too. Like they might find other avenues or other mediums, or it just like you said, the confidence. It gives them confidence to maybe take another step,
Hmm.
or maybe this is enough. Maybe this was all they needed, and that's
Right,
great.
right. And my students of for all so I've been teaching now for 30 years, and so I know it's amazing.
Crazy
And
when you put numbers like that
I
to
know
stuff.
it's like, whoa, how'd that happen?
I
So
know, where did those 30 years
I
go?
know. And so I've been a professional artist for 30 years, which is like, and I mean, you have to work it. I mean,
You do.
but it's my chosen path. And it's why at 2 years or 1 years old, I knew that fabric was my chosen path. And, and my students, through the years, so many of them, I had a studio in Denver for almost 20 years. And so I had a good solid group for most of those years. And So as I grew in techniques, they grew in techniques, and some of them do exactly the, what I do. But then I also have those that will springboard off of it. And in my workshops, I encourage that, I want them to learn the the basics of what, learn the found it's Picasso, I think, is like learn the foundation so you can break the rules as an artist.
Yes.
And so you can't, it's hard to springboard without having your foundation. So it's good to know, like, you have to know anatomy, and there's some things that you need to know, like you have to know how to thread a sewing machine if you're going to sew. You know?
Right.
So, but I will tell you, I've had students in my workshops that hand sew everything, and it blows me away that they can like hand sew the complete project together and
Ah.
quickly. So, you know, everybody has their own skill set.
And it shows you that it's personal. There's not just one way to do something. I believe that like exploration. I believe in the foundation, so important, and then exploring what the right way is for you. They might enjoy working with their hands more than that, more than working with a machine.
Hmm. Yes, and I'm going to segue into hand sewing
Yes.
because I love hand sewing. I do a lot on machine sewing, and then hand sewing. There was one time I was sitting in my studio and I was hand sewing something, and I don't even think I had music on. I think I was really truly in that moment, and I was sewing and I was thinking, you know what? This is so good for us. This is
Mm.
so good for our soul to like give ourselves a breath, a moment, and do something as simple as in and out, in and out
Yeah.
stitching. And so I really try to help my students understand that, because in today's world, um, I, we had the hustle culture. I think we're kind of stepping out of the hustle. Let's hope
Mhm.
out of the hustle culture a little bit, but it's so important for us to take a moment in whatever we're doing and just enjoy it.
Absolutely. It's sort of like a meditation, or it's definitely important to slow down. And there is such a resurgence in traditional handicrafts like that
Hmm.
now for young people too, which is great.
Hmm. Yeah, I love the young people. I had a student. She was a homeschooled young gal at that time, young a child at that time, and she started with me when she was, I'm gonna say 7, and she stayed to 16 with me, and she would come
Wow.
every Wednesday, and we had the entire morning to ourselves, and we would create. And so I had her for, what is that, like 6 years or six and a half,
Very
7 years,
formative
whatever.
years too.
Right. And also for her to be, this young gal, to this little girl first. Little girls love, being around fabric and dolls
Right.
and that kind of stuff. And then you start to grow into your teens, but that she still stuck with me, till she had just turned 16, and then it was going to makeup and boys. And so it was, which is, I mean,
Naturally.
it is. But I had books from each year of what like a folder, like a
Oh,
3-ring
yeah.
binder of what we did each year. And so we started with very simple hand sewing, just like how to use scissors, how to use needle and thread, and we ended in sculpting, like sculpting in clay and designing costuming for her pieces. And even sewing on a sewing machine. And just to have that moment with her was so wonderful. And I mean, I am not in contact with her anymore, and she's
No.
probably in her mid 20s, maybe even early, maybe jumping into 30s or whatever. But um, um, for her, I know that this stuck with her because we had such a wonderful relationship. And I felt so honored to be able to have that time with her, and the trust in her mother to um, give her daughter to me and give these things to her, teach her these things. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I would love for you to talk. I love that you did binders. I'm a big proponent of like before and after pictures of projects or pictures along the way or just the finished project because I think it's so easy to forget where we started and it's easy, I think, to not give ourselves credit for things that we learn or progress that we make. And even if you don't show them to anybody, it just seems like a really great way to document what you've worked on. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about like why did you do the binders and do you keep track of what you do? Like I know you do for marketing, but are there other ways that you track things like that?
Yeah, I think with her with the binders, what I wanted to show progression, and I wanted to. So I would have, like we would do. I would have her do an initial drawing of what she wanted to create, and then I would, in the beginning, I would develop the pattern for her, and then keep the pattern within that binder. So it was like
Okay.
that little
So it's
package of
functioning
that,
too.
so through that many years, we had like they had little envelopes, like those little clear envelopes. So each piece that we did had, and we would do cut out like fabric samples, and so it would all be together so that she could reference back to it
Yes.
and that type of thing. In today's world for myself, um, because we have the internet and we have social media, that is how I do all my tracking
Yeah.
now. And I love doing, and I actually, I want to back it up a little bit. So in my one of a kind collector pieces, I do progress, like what I'm doing this week type of thing. And my one of a
For the
kind,
collector? For you
well,
or for the collector?
I do it. I actually do it for social media and for the collector, so they can follow along on the journey on social media.
Got it.
Um, and then at the end of the project, I will write a blog, still a blog. I will write a blog posting of the entire experience. And so many of my collectors print those out so that they have like a
They can keep them.
documentation of how it was put together. And
That's wonderful.
for me, I also talk about, I love the symbolism behind things. And so I will talk about, like, through my process, what was my insight into why am I doing this and what is this meaning to me and what is the purpose of it? And then I will show the technique. And I study, my big focus is Asian symbolism. And so a lot of that, even on the outskirts of it, comes into my work today. And even in my workshops, I will give with each lesson, I give an insight to how I'm thinking artistically about something, and it might not be directly related to the technique, but it might be so more so about the emotion that we're in capturing
Hmm.
or capturing within this project that we're
It
working on.
doesn't have to be so literal.
Right,
It,
right,
okay.
right. It's more because with artists, I love mindset. I love like going in and why am I doing this and what is this and how is this going to help someone understand why I'm creating this piece.
Well, I think that perfectly segues. Number one, I'm going to put your all your contacts in the show notes so people can find your social media
Oh,
and see your beautiful pictures and your progress on what you do. But it kind of segues right into. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you do now that you haven't talked about and how that meaning plays into it and how it sort of informs what you do, your materials. I know you spoke earlier about how you use very specialized fabrics. Um, your materials are so special, along with the whole meaning behind them. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about what that looks like for you today.
thanks for asking that. I, you know, I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to do this and determined enough and stubborn enough that I've been doing this for 30 years and really push myself to grow. And I'm going to say probably 20 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. I'm going to segue back just a little bit, but I'll hit into it. Is I was able to go to China, Japan, and South Korea and visit those countries. And um, I had already had an interest in Asian aesthetics, I'm going to say. And so I brought that home with me, that feeling of that home with me. And each culture is so definitive in what they have to offer. I love those cultures. And so I came home and I was able to, and Chinese imports were just starting to come into the country. China was like getting rid of their old stuff so they could be new. And thank goodness for us. And I found two hats, children's hats, and I fell in love with them, all hand done and antique or vintage they are. And it prompted me to really get in and find out what they were and to study them. And there wasn't much information. And I finally found one woman who had knowledge of what they were. And she was at the University of Philadelphia, and she had written a book on Chinese children's hats.
Okay.
And the story
So
is
specialized.
very, I know, very, that's why there was one person in the world writing about it. And so um, I was able to, because I was already creating Chinese like Asian, let's just say Asian like dolls. And these hats intrigued me so much, and I was curious about them. And so when a Chinese mother becomes pregnant, she starts to hand make a doll or hand sew a doll, I'm sorry, hand sew a hat for her child to come. And she incorporates certain properties into it, protections, um, future, fortunes and things like that. So each, like the dragon, the tiger, the bat, the lotus, there's all special meanings behind that. And that prompted me to contact this woman. And I was able to procure a book that she had that was debind, but I put it back together, and it was my Bible for so many years. And that really prompted my whole study into this culture. And so I've been, I'm going to say a little over 20 years, really enmeshed in this culture. And so that led me to fabrics and what am I using in today's world. And so when I was in China and South Korea, I was able to buy beautiful silk brocade from there, from the factory. So I knew it was
Wow.
100% silk. I saw the silkworms. I went through the whole thing,
That's
and
amazing.
I know. And they were only taking cash, and I had to go back to the bank several times to get money. And and it was all, we were communicating in different languages, and it was that was a wonderful experience about it. And I still have a lot of that fabric today, and
Really?
I use that. But I also was able to find a connection with Japanese kimono, and so that was that's at this present time, that is like my biggest fabric that I'm using in my pieces is vintage kimono fabric. And I
So
have,
when you have materials like that that are limited supply, right? Because they're vintage and you don't know, what you're going to find. Does that stop you, or how does that make your like your creating process different? Like, because you can't just go buy more if you mess up.
right,
So, like,
right.
is it good? Is it bad? Is it challenging? Is it
Um,
exciting? Like,
I find it very exciting.
okay.
As artists, and I would say especially people that work with fabric, we have a tendency to hoard.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm sure there's, I work
Yeah.
with fabric, so I know other fabric people, so I know everybody hoards. And so I just started thinking about um, like the kimonos, all the pieces that I get, the kimonos are already been disassembled. And
Okay.
so I was able to buy pieces. So even more limited. I don't even have a whole kimono. So
Mhm.
um, I, I do have I have to segue and say I do have a couple kimonos that I have disassembled, and the beautiful thing is removing the stitches that somebody hand stitched in there,
Oh,
and going through that journey of them creating the kimono as I'm disassembling it and thinking about what they were thinking about when they were sewing it together. And they have specific sewing techniques to put these pieces together. And kimonos are mostly done in rectangle pieces. So you have beautiful fabric pieces that you can work with. And then getting back to only specific amounts of, I find it really exciting. And I'm at the point in my career where I'm knocking on wood, I don't have very many screw ups. So when I'm designing, I know that I can make the piece work and it's going to work. And
how
so,
do how do you feel about like waste? Are you like an engineer when you're
yeah,
planning out
I am
using
I am I am
every
a
bit?
Scrooge with my fabric. Always have been. I use, I mean, I throw my waste is not even there's nothing there's
Yeah.
nothing it's so little that I use every tiny little piece and that I mean I block it out so everything is used and a lot of times I have to design around the amount of fabric that I have.
Oh,
So,
right.
because,
Right.
and I might have to piece it together to create like a whole piece.
Hmm.
Um, but that's the fun of it. That's like the pushing yourself to be a master at what you're doing is really wonderful because you can take pieces that somebody else cared for and wore and loved and you can create it into a piece of art that you can one of my collectors or someone else can purchase and them knowing that it's truly a one of a kind because there's
And it has a history.
yeah, it has a history. And the fabric, the kimono fabrics I have, I was able to pick them all out myself. So I
Wow.
know what I have. And I have a very beautiful collection of fabrics. And a lot of times I bought it just for the texture of it, but then I can dye it. I can
Right.
do whatever I want to the fabric to make it go the way that I want it to go.
How do you feel calling yourself like a master at your technique? Like, how does that sit with you? Because you are obviously.
I actually, at this point in my life, I own it. I mean,
Yeah.
I am a master at what I do. Um, I've put in the hours of education for myself. I have devoted. I mean, it's a devotion to what I do. It to me, it's like at this point in my life, it is a sacred walk that I do
Mhm.
in my creating, and so I I believe that I am a master in what I do, um, and I don't mean that to like, oh, I'm a master in what I do. It's
I know you
because
don't.
it's I am a master craftsman in what I create in the little genre that I create
Hmm.
because it is my life and it's my passion. That's kind of an overused word, but
Yeah.
it is. It's what I do in in my work and in my service to others. You know,
Right.
being a master in something, there's so much to it, and there's a mindset to it, and I want to help my collectors receive that in the pieces that they get from me and then also in my students in the instruction and the care that I give to them.
And with your work is very focused and a lot of repetitive pinching work. So how do you keep yourself not just your mind healthy and but your body physically? Like, how do you, as a full-time artist in what you do, take care of yourself?
I love that you asked that question, and you know my lifestyle. I am because I'm so devoted to what I do in my arts. I know I need to have a healthy body, and it needs to be healthy from the inside out. And so I eat extremely healthy. I am very active sports wise, and so I do yoga on a very regular basis. And the yoga brings to me peace within myself, understanding how to work through challenges in life, because we all have challenges. Even when I'm creating, I have challenges, but it's all through breath work and understanding just the somatic movement of the body. Also helps me design the bodies of my pieces.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that connection.
Yeah, so, and then that is the peace, gentle side of myself. And then way over on the other side, if you remember, I was talking about, fabric and chiseling and that. So you have yoga and that. And then way over on the other side, I kickbox. And so, so, which I've been very passionate about for the last 8 years. And I love it so much. It is a extremely physical workout. It is a hard workout. It is a discipline. But the wonderful thing about it is it gives me the ability to know, oh, my body can do that. If
Right.
my body can do that, my mind can do that. So
Shows
I
you what you're
can push
capable of.
myself in my art career too. And then I have the capability to sit or stand and physically do the work that it takes and the stamina that it takes to be an artist.
When do you find you're most productive?
I um I block my days
Okay.
pretty, and I'm I really feel like left brain, right brain type of thing. And so if I need to write something, I'm really good. Like I'm a really super early riser, but I'm really good first thing in the morning. My writing ability, if it's, an article or a process or instructions for my students, I do that in the morning time. And then I save my afternoons for my sewing and my more contemplative work,
Okay.
um, because I'm a little I've kind of got that energy out in the morning, so I can settle in as the afternoon comes in, and then depending on light, I mean, I do have good lighting, but um, so I'm a regular worker. I mean, I work 7 days a week. I try to take time off. Being working for yourself, you can like I can go to lunch with or tea with somebody, or I can take a time out and I can go kickbox, or I can go do my yoga. So it's a really nice. But I do, I'm a scheduled person,
Yeah.
and that's what works for me. And um, I feel that because myself, I work better like that. I can be more productive like that.
And being a professional self-employed artist, is that something that where the obviously the benefits outweigh the negatives? Because obviously there's negatives like maybe consistency and it's all on your shoulders. But
Right,
um,
right.
how does that work for
Well,
you?
I think the biggest thing in today's world is financial. So,
Yeah.
because if you're, and I support my family doing what I
Right. Which
do,
is a big
and
deal through your creative endeavors.
it,
It's
it
that's
it's
it's a
and
big
so I
deal.
do have my hands in a lot of different things, because you know you it's it's very hard to make a living as an artist. And so and living in success is your own definition. So
Absolutely.
so you have to decide what's important to you and what you want out of your life. So I don't drive a Mercedes and I don't live in a large house. Let's just say that. But I have a nice car and I live in a comfortable house. And and I'm happy. I think I'm happy. I
Yeah.
love what I do. I love my husband. Um, and he's supportive in what I do. I'm going to just talk about that just for a little bit. I have a husband who's a rugby coach, which is also the other side of being an artist. And but he's as passionate about his work as I am about mine. So that is our common bond, is
Yeah.
that.
And you've also brought what you do to the athletes with your
Yes.
yoga.
Yes.
So
So I
there
I
is
do restorative
connection.
yoga with the athletes, and they need it. So because
Definitely.
rugby is it's a college level,
Oh,
and
did you froze it?
so they get beat up, and they are stiff young men, and but the kindest and nicest young men. So um, and I feel like, like I was talking about the kickboxing bringing in strength to my work, the ability to, the yoga's really brought in like that emotional and spiritual, for me, spiritualness into my work too. So, and
Right.
taking a breath and slowing myself down.
Do you have other rituals that you do, like daily rituals that you do?
Yeah, I love rituals, and so I start my day off every single morning with a cup of tea, and it is a ritual. And I have a kettle that I start, and while the water is boiling, I have honey, a specific honey that I put in my beautiful mug, and I have Earl Grey tea that I love that I put in there, and then I froth my almond milk so it's warmed and frothed, and it's like a 20-minute ritual every
Routine.
morning. And I'm kind of standing in the dark in the kitchen because I get up so early, but it is such a beautiful way to start your day. And it
Mm.
is, I'm not really thinking. I'm like smelling the tea, I'm listening to the water boil, I'm just looking at my cup, and just that moment, taking that moment for myself, sets my entire day. And then I will take my tea and I either listen to an inspirational podcast or or something inspirational, or I will journal or do something. I've got away from journaling, but I'm going to get back into it. But do
Mm.
something that is really for myself. And I am fortunate enough that I get up early enough that I can give myself sometimes 2 hours, and you
To
know,
start. That's a
and it's
great
not
way
even
to
7
start.
o'clock yet by the time my 2 hours is up. So and then I start work pretty early. I mean, I start answering emails like probably like 7:30 or so. I
Mm.
try to wait till 7:30 so I don't get caught up in it, but I
Yeah.
try to give myself that that morning time just for me, and just to kind of get my breath and settle my, like, to wake up and to settle my system into the day.
It definitely sets your day up for success.
It
I
does.
think
Yeah.
starting like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share that we didn't cover this time? I'm sure we'll have more conversations at other times, but is there anything you'd
Yeah,
like
I
people
think
to
I just
know?
want to say to people is, if you have it in your heart to do art, that rhymes, so that means something right there. Um, just start. Oh my goodness, that rhymes too. So
Maybe
if
you're a
you have it
poet.
in your heart to do art, just start. That's going to be my logo of the year. So, um, and you know, don't compare, because everybody presents themselves differently. Everybody starts, so I mean, I started when I was 1 years old, just at the fabric, and I had no capability. And then at 3, wanting to sew for a mannequin that I didn't even know to do it. I mean, I didn't even know what a sewing machine was. Um, so, it doesn't matter where you are in your life. You can do, you can start anything at any time. That's the whole conversation too.
Absolutely. It's never
Yeah.
too late, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So just get out there and follow your curiosity.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much, Leslie. I'm
Yes,
glad that we had this time.
I
As
know.
always, I love talking to you,
Yes.
and I'll look forward to speaking again soon.
Yes, I loved it. Thank you so much. And I feel honored to be here with you. It's just really wonderful.
There's something so deeply grounding about hearing someone like Leslie talk about creativity, not as a career move or a side hustle, but as a way of living. Her story reminded me that art is not something we outgrow or leave behind. It's always there, waiting and ready when we are. I was especially moved by the way she spoke about sewing, not just as a craft, but as an emotional anchor. It's meditative, it's healing. And when you combine that with the power of teaching and sharing your gift with others, that's the kind of ripple effect that changes lives. One thing that really stuck with me was when Leslie said that everything we learn builds on one another. Even though those chapters of our lives that seem unrelated, like her time in the dental field, actually shaped the artist and teacher she is today. That's such a beautiful reminder that nothing is wasted. We also touched on the reality of being a self-employed creative, how important it is to take care of your health, to find daily routines that support your energy, and to keep showing up even on the messy days. And let's not forget her encouragement to document your progress. Whether it's through journaling, social media, or your own quiet reflection, it's so important to honor how far you've come. So here's what I want to leave you with. You don't need permission to start or to start again. Whether you're returning to something you've always loved or exploring something brand new, your creativity is valid and your story matters. And you're absolutely capable of building something beautiful. If this conversation moved you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend who needs a reminder that it's never too late to create. Until next time, keep creating, keep exploring, and keep showing up for yourself. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe for free and share it with a friend. It helps others find the show and grows our community. Remember, creativity is yours to define, there are no rules, and it's never too late. Until next time.